Gerry, last night we had what was a very successful Candidate Experience Awards. One of the things that struck me, I think, was the volume of companies that are committing now.
Yeah.
What do you think's brought on this kind of surge this year to get so many people involved?
I think for the first time, not for the first time, but I think there's just been a growing evolution of insight on the part of the companies and their leadership that we really have to take care of all stakeholders. We've spent so much time in the last decade or so trying to understand how to use technology and all of those kinds of things to give the recruiter a desktop, to give the staffing leader some reports, to engage the hiring manager to share their satisfaction and figure out how to screw up their job description even more and faster online. So, you know, we have taken a lot of things that are broken and just made them faster and more productive online, but
more people.
But slowly but surely we're trying to chipping away at those. But we never really addressed some of the basic elements of what the candidate actually needed. We just assumed that whatever we were giving them was what they wanted and needed. And we're suddenly discovering that they're telling us, no, that's not just what we needed.
Yeah.
We want to make decisions too. We need certain kinds of information for us going in before we'll even apply to you. And you know, when you turn us down this way, you know, that's pretty damn rude.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we're now going to tell everyone about you by going
not to apply.
Right, not to apply. So suddenly people are going, what do you mean? What do you mean you're not going to refer? What do you mean you're going to actually agitate about how bad it is in the recruiting process? What does that mean? And so you start hearing people talking about what the cost of that is without necessarily having evidence that they can use to calculate that cost. So the big issue I think that's changed is we're now moving much more to a world where there's some evidence-based support for some of the things that we know to be true, that we treat candidates badly. Well, what does that mean? So we're identifying what those practices are. More and more people like you are writing about that.
Definitely one of the things that I've noticed, Gerry, is when I go through the data, and I'm listening again to North America, depending who we're talking to. If I'm talking to talent acquisition, recruiting, we tend to talk about candidate experience as a technology problem.
Yep.
But the ATS isn't this, we have a black hole, we talk about the technology issues. But looking at the candidate feedback, certainly from a UK perspective, and looking at the people who are doing it well, it was actually the human issue.
Yes.
I don't know how much you think that applies, or what you can think of as good practice that an individual recruiter can't change their ATS tomorrow. They may not have the power to do that.
Right.
What can they do to make it better?
Well, so they can configure the way in which they tell someone that they no longer want to talk to them.
Right, as simple as that.
Yeah. It is as simple as that, because most ATSs, you can configure how that goes out and whether it in fact goes out to every single person who applied.
Got it.
And in a lazy world, they forget that last bit of the process. It may be in there, but they're not held accountable for it. Some staffing leaders are basically saying you can't close an open rec until every single person has been informed.
Yeah.
That simple thing ensures that at least there was an effort to send that out. Now, on the other side, was it in fact received? So we also need to know whether or not the person that you're trying to say, I'm interested in seeing you further, or I'm no longer interested in seeing you, whether they're actually getting that email or that text, or whether it's going in the junk file, or it's going somewhere that they don't see it. So we need to know all of that. And that's just one simple thing in terms of how we deal with technology, because it's not the technology, right? It's the human factor of how we use that to share things with that. The other thing that I've learned, and in part from you and others, that as we look at what we're doing in the UK, now potentially in Australia, is that there are some cultural differences. And it's more than just the language or the spelling of certain words, right?
Yeah.
It's how people act toward each other, and with the kind of courtesy or the respect that's kind of expected. So I believe that what we're doing in the United States can be adopted elsewhere, but only by the people who are embedded in their culture. So that's why you and others in the UK really are fundamentally supported by us in terms of goodwill and all of the tools we're developing. But it is really up to you to decide the quality of those questions and how they have to shift in order to get at what's going on in the UK. I think that's enormous. And the other thing that you taught me was, from an awards point of view, the U.S. Is kind of brash.
You like to be the champion.
We like to be the champion. We like to jump in. So it's easy for me to get a whole bunch of people to jump into a contest, and out of that comes the quote winners. But we're really not doing a winning thing. We're doing a benchmarking thing. So we actually tell people who've jumped in, listen, if you lose, we're never going to tell anybody that you're named.
That you lost.
That you lost. So that you don't have, to feel bad about that. But because that's part of our culture too. Yeah. But there's going to be a lot of winners. Right, so I had a couple people when we gave out the awards who said, oh, maybe it's not so good to win an award among all these other people. And I said, no. I said, all of these other people are all equal winners because the evidence showed they all are doing things more for how they treat candidates, and the candidates know it. And so we need to make you guys more visible. And so I want a broad benchmarking base, and I think in other countries, to your point, we may not want to call it an award. We may want to move more with a different set of language that may be more attractive for the culture that's trying to get this moving.
That's great. Interesting. Gerry, thanks for all your work.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure following you.